I have read the bill we are discussing today with utter disgust. The government proposes to revise the definition of embryo. In the new definition, in addition to the classical embryo, which is created by the fusion of an egg cell produced in the female body and a sperm cell produced in the male body, in other words, the embryo that we all once were. In addition, a number of other entities are now also explicitly included under that definition. Embryos that are created, for example, through cell nucleus transplantation. The technique by which Dolly the sheep was cloned, and which could potentially also be used to clone humans. Or embryos that have arisen by reprogramming body cells, such as a skin cell in a petri dish, into a sperm or egg cell. Then, to fuse that sperm cell and egg cell together. This creates a technique that makes it possible for two people of the same sex to have a child together, or for one person to reproduce with themselves. Or embryos that have arisen by inserting the nucleus of a human body cell into an animal egg cell, the so-called human-animal combination. Chairman, if that doesn't provoke disgust, then what does? And I realize that disgust is an emotional reaction, and in the run-up to this debate, it turned out not to be so. It's not very easy to translate the resistance I feel into rational arguments. Sometimes you feel in every fiber of your body that something is fundamentally wrong, but yes, you can't fully objectify it or express it. Why exactly is that the case? And in that context, it's interesting to point out an influential essay called The Wisdom of Repugnance by a prominent American bioethicist and philosopher, in which he argues that disgust sometimes contains a wisdom that runs deeper than our arguments. He argues that when people recoil from a certain practice, this shouldn't simply be dismissed as something purely irrational, but rather as a signal that something essential is at stake, something we can't quite put into words yet. But of course, I'm still going to try to put my objections into words. And my main objection to the bill is that it constitutes a direct attack on the sanctity of human life. And that should concern us all. No party in this chamber denies that human life is inherently worthy of protection. Likewise, no party in this chamber denies the importance of improving medical care. The question is, as with almost all medical ethical issues, where do we draw the line in weighing these interests? And in this case, we see that the value of the sanctity of life must be significantly diminished in favor of the interests of science, while the actual concrete benefits for medical care itself that directly result from these new techniques being regulated, those real benefits are still very hypothetical, questionable, and also indirect. And now, specifically regarding the sanctity of human life, this bill changes a number of fundamental points. How human life is viewed. In the current definition, the criterion is still used: of a cell or a coherent group of cells with the ability to develop into a human being. And in the new definition, it is precisely this criterion, the ability to develop into a human being, the core of the protectability of such entities, that is completely abandoned. And the reason given is that this potential, in the case of the added B entities, cannot or can hardly be determined in a number of cases. It is known that a classic embryo created from an egg fertilized by a sperm cell has the ability to develop into a human being. But with those artificially constructed entities where human DNA is inserted into animal egg cells and other experiments are being conducted, it is still very much in question what all of this will lead to, or what kind of creation this might possibly result in. And now, all these entities are being lumped together with the classic embryo. Human life is reduced to an anonymous, relationless research object, a product, a raw material that can be used to make money. Human life is produced in a laboratory. Some research is conducted on it. The results are recorded, and the research object is destroyed again after 2 weeks. Well, successful, Experiment. What shall we research next? Chair, this current legislative proposal and the deeply concerning infringement on the sanctity of life do not stand alone. In the Netherlands, we have already been seeing, for quite some time, a worrying shift in the way the value of human life is weighed. Under the guise of so-called progressive values and scientific advancement, we see how, for example, euthanasia was first legalized and then gradually expanded step by step. First for unbearable physical suffering, then for psychological suffering, to allowing it for underage psychiatric patients, until now we are talking about, well, we might as well apply euthanasia to anyone whose life is considered complete. We have normalized abortion, which has grown into a mass industry, with an abortion taking place every 15 minutes. These days, you don't even have to leave your house for an abortion. Abortion pills can now be ordered online in just 5 minutes. They are flying off the shelves like hotcakes. It's illegal, Minister. She knows it, but she refuses to enforce the law. That also says something about norms and values. The malleability of human life is being normalized, and we have now reached the point that children are being encouraged to undergo medical procedures that irreversibly mutilate their bodies and lead to infertility. And now today, this proposal to amend the Embryo Act, where the intrinsic value of nascent human life is increasingly being subordinated to science. And I notice, Mr. Chairman, that these issues are almost always considered in isolation. They are presented as just a small necessary step, sufficiently safeguarded, surrounded by guarantees, often combined with a few distressing examples that are greatly exaggerated. And then, just like that, we take another step forward. And I think it's important not to keep viewing these themes in isolation from each other and to get bogged down in detail, but also to zoom out and talk about a pattern that is becoming visible and its consequences. Over the years and when added up, it becomes clear that we are moving in one direction, towards a society in which human life is becoming less and less valuable and is increasingly treated as a matter of individual choice, technological innovation, and economic utility. And what are the potential consequences of that for the fabric of a society in the very distant future? None of us has a crystal ball, but from a political perspective, it is surely also important to dare to move forward, to look. And the government shows no vision whatsoever and seems completely unconcerned with the potentially risky long-term effects on our society. In the explanatory memorandum, too, everything is presented this way from a technical point of view, illuminated. Take, for example, the passage about those human-animal combinations. It says, and I quote, "Consider, for example, a pig embryo into which human stem cells are placed, which then develop a human liver within the embryo. The aim is for the pig to develop as a normal pig, but with a human liver. This human liver could then subsequently be transplanted into a human." End of quote. From a scientific point of view, Mr. Chairman, it is undoubtedly incredibly clever, impressive. But what does it mean for people's lifestyles if they know that they have a few spare livers or other organs in stock somewhere just waiting? What happens when you start tampering with the fundamental certainties of life on which our entire society and all its social structures are built? Take, for example, the certainty that a man-woman relationship is necessary for reproduction. In anthropology, the fact that you need someone else to have a child, and not just anyone, but someone of the opposite sex, is considered the most basic, the most primary reason why people enter into lasting relationships with each other. And if reproduction becomes an individual project, it's my skin cell, my sex cell, my embryo, it's my child, then the necessity of that bond disappears. And what does that do to the position of the family as the cornerstone of society? The place where a child should be able to develop safely, where a child learns that the world, it's not all about him or her. There is a father, a mother, each with their own authority, their own perspective, brothers and sisters with whom you share a blood bond. If the traditional family is replaced by a model in which all intended parents, alone or together with someone else, can, as it were, order a child with all the desired characteristics, then we lose the ability to also accept the unexpected, the uncontrollable, and the vulnerable aspects of life, to accept them. Chairman, if we start tampering with the fundamental boundaries of human life through germline modification, synthetic embryos, genetic optimization, designer babies, and other developments, then this is not just a technical change, but a transformation of our entire view of humanity. Humans are then no longer beings endowed with their own human dignity, but a being that is made and therefore can also be improved, optimized, or rejected. Chairman, I will conclude. Not everything that is technically possible should also be permitted. Not everything that science can do should be facilitated by lawmakers. There are limits. Limits that arise from a centuries-old understanding of what it means to be human and what distinguishes a person from a product, a raw material, or a research object. FVD wants to safeguard those boundaries. We cherish the certainty that human life has intrinsic value regardless of the state or stage it is in. The certainty that only a man and a woman together can create new life, not something you arrange with someone of the same sex or on your own in a laboratory. The certainty that a child cannot be manufactured. Chairman, each and every one of these certainties functions as pillars upon which our society is built. And all previous generations have respected those pillars, never challenged them. And now we see how in just a few generations they are being tampered with more and more, with unforeseeable consequences for our way of life. And that trend must be reversed. And that is why FVD will not support this bill. Thank you.